The wind howled outside. The sky was dark and full of ash. Ethan sat alone in his small house, deep at the edge of the neutral zone, where no one dared to live anymore. He was fixing a broken light on his old plasma rifle when he heard it. Knock, knock. He froze. No one ever came here. No one should come here. He stood up slowly, holding the rifle in one hand. His boots echoed softly on the metal floor as he walked toward the rusted door. The knock came again. K-N-O-C-K knock. Knock. Ethan opened the small security screen. What he saw made his heart pause. A small alien girl stood outside in the cold night. Her clothes were torn. Her skin was pale, her eyes wide and full of fear. Behind her, a taller figure, an alien woman, probably her mother, stood still like a statue. They both looked hungry and scared. Ethan unlocked the voice mic. "What do you want?" he asked in a hard voice. The girl stepped closer. Her voice was soft. "Too soft, please. My mom can clean, cook, obey. We just need shelter, human." Ethan stared at her. She looked no older than 8 or 9 in human years. Her mother hadn't moved or spoken. She was trembling, holding her arms around her thin body. Ethan's eyes went to the black collar on the mother's neck. It blinked red. Slave tag. He cursed under his breath. Aliens weren't allowed here, not without permits. And a slave alien? If the zone patrol caught them, he could go to prison. Or worse, why come here? He asked, narrowing his eyes. The girl's lips trembled. "They said humans are cruel, but kind too. You're our last hope." For a long moment, Ethan said nothing. His fingers touched the door lock. He shouldn't. He really shouldn't. But her eyes. He had seen that look once before. In the war. In a child who had lost everything. Ethan sighed. He muttered. The door opened with a creak. Cold air rushed in. The girl quickly stepped forward, holding her mother's hand. They entered without a sound. Ethan shut the door. Behind them. Inside, the girl looked around with wonder. The lights, the heater, the table full of old tools, it all seemed new to her. Her mother still hadn't spoken. She sat on the floor, kneeling like a trained servant. Ethan placed his rifle back on the wall and looked at them. "I'm Ethan. This is my house. No trouble here, got it?" The girl nodded. "I'm Luma. This is my mom." Ethan gave her a sharp look. "Your mom has a slave tag. You know what that means?" Luma nodded slowly. "She was born in the camps. She doesn't speak unless told. But she can clean. She can cook. She will obey." Ethan rubbed his face. "And what about you?" Luma looked down. "I was born free. But they still hunted us." That sentence hit him like a bullet. "Who's they?" he asked. Luma looked up but said nothing. Ethan didn't push. He walked to the kitchen and heated a bowl of soup. It wasn't much, but it was warm. He placed it on the floor beside the mother. She didn't move. "Tell her to eat," he said. Luma bent close to her mother and whispered something in her alien tongue. The woman's hand slowly reached for the bowl. She began eating like someone who hadn't seen food in days. Ethan watched. Quietly. Later that night, Ethan set up an old mattress in the corner for them. He gave the girl a blanket. "You can stay, but no loud noise. And if the patrol comes, you hide in the basement. Understood?" Luma nodded. "Thank you, human." He went to bed. But sleep didn't come easy. Too many questions. Where were they running from? Why was the mother still wearing a slave collar? Why did a child that small speak so calmly? Like someone much older inside? But most of all, why did it feel like something bigger was coming? At midnight, Ethan woke suddenly. The mother was sitting near the window. Her hands were folded. Her head was bowed. She was chanting, but not in prayer. Her voice was strange, low, deep, ancient. It sounded like a warning. Ethan reached for his gun. Something told him letting them in was just the beginning. Ethan woke before sunrise. But he wasn't in his bed. He was lying on the floor of his own hallway, cold metal beneath his back. The door to the main room wide open. His head was spinning. He stood up fast. What the hell? That's when he saw it. The alien mother was kneeling in front of his locked weapon cabinet. Not trying to open it, just whispering to it. In her language. Strange, slow, rhythmic words. Almost like she was speaking to the guns inside. Ethan stepped forward. Hey, what are you doing? She stopped, turned, and for the first time since arriving, she looked him in the eye. There was something in her stare. Not fear, not pain, but a strange memory. Like she had seen this moment before. Before Ethan could speak again, Luma ran into the room. She's sleepwalking. Luma cried. Please, she does this sometimes when she's scared. Ethan didn't believe that. Not fully. But he let it go for now. Keep her away from the weapons, he said coldly. Luma nodded, pulling her mother gently back to the mattress. The morning sun turned the ash in the air golden. But it was a false peace. Ethan made coffee while scanning the outside monitors. No patrols, no drones. Still quiet. He turned to Luma. Now listen carefully. You and your mom are here under one rule. No one sees you. This house is off-grid. But if anyone reports even a flicker of movement, we're all in danger. Luma nodded. We understand. He handed her a datapad. I've programmed house rules in here. Read them. Learn them. But Luma stared at the screen blankly. I can't read your language. Ethan paused. Then I'll teach you. From that day, they followed a strange routine. By day, the mother cleaned silently, as if her body followed a program. Luma helped in the kitchen, learned basic English, and watched how Ethan moved. But by night, Ethan watched them. He noticed strange things. Sometimes the mother would whisper in her sleep. Sometimes she stood facing corners for hours. Once, he found Luma drawing symbols on the back of an old cereal box. Symbols that didn't match any known alien script. What is this? He asked. Luma hid the box quickly. Just stories my mom told me. She says I'll understand them when I'm ready. Ethan didn't press, but the feeling in his gut got heavier. 3 days later, while fixing an old vent pipe on the roof, Ethan spotted something in the distance. A glint. He zoomed in with his optic lens. A drone. Stationary, high above the tree line. Too far for a normal patrol, but exactly where he used to hide back when he was a soldier. Ethan's hand tightened on the rail. They were watching him, and they weren't human. That night, Luma came to him, holding the tracker she had ripped from her mother's collar. This was never a slave tag, she whispered. It was a locator, hidden inside a fake brand. Ethan stared at the blinking chip. Who put it there? Luma looked down. I think it was me. What? I don't remember it. But when I sleep, I see flashes. Labs. Men with white masks. They made me do things. Made me forget things. Ethan's blood went cold. She wasn't just a refugee. She might be a weapon. As thunder rolled in once again, Luma asked softly, Why did you let us in? Ethan looked at her, this girl with secrets in her eyes and power she didn't yet understand. I don't know, he said. Maybe because you asked. But deep inside, Ethan knew something else. He had let them in because they didn't feel like strangers. They felt like a trigger, and something was about to explode. The storm passed, but in Ethan's mind, the thunder had just begun. That night he couldn't sleep, not after what Luma told him. Not after seeing that drone in the distance, silent, still, and not human. Made. So while Luma and her mother rested, Ethan sat alone in the basement, pulling out something he hadn't touched in years, his old military archive drive. It was dusty, locked, and full of files he had promised himself to forget. He plugged it in. The screen blinked awake. The system asked for a code. He hesitated, then typed, DEADEYES74. The lock opened. The files inside were restricted even during the war. Top level only, but Ethan was once part of a special division. A quiet project. Operation Hollow Nest. He typed that name in. The search returned one document, classified specimen, RHAVAO2. He clicked, a black screen. Then a photo, not a full-grown alien, not a warrior. A small girl, blue-skinned, wide-I. Ethan single quotes S breath caught. The report continued. Subject. Shows passive obedience in early stages, but DNA reveals unstable enhancements. Do not attempt to bond. Psychological drift may trigger latent awakening. He scrolled down. The final line hit him like a bullet. Termination recommended. Too human. Too dangerous. Ethan leaned back in shock. She wasn't just some random refugee. She had been made, engineered, marked. And worst of all, he might have been one of the soldiers sent to hunt her kind. The next morning, Ethan acted normal. He gave them breakfast. Asked about their sleep. Showed Luma more English words, but inside his thoughts raced. What is she really? What happens if she awakens? Later that afternoon, Luma was playing with his old radio tapping buttons, pretending to talk to someone. Ethan walked in. Where's your mother? He asked. She's cleaning the laundry room, Luma replied with a smile. Ethan nodded, but didn't move. Then he asked gently, do you remember where you came from, Luma? Before you reached my door. Her smile faded. Not really, she said. Sometimes I see flashes, a white room, a woman crying. And lights. Too many lights. Were you born in a lab? Luma went quiet. After a moment, she looked up. Do you think I'm bad? Ethan felt a knot in his chest. No, I think. You're not just alien. He knelt beside her. I think you're something more. That night, while Luma slept, Ethan checked the tracker chip again. He placed it inside a metal case and scanned it with his signal scrambler, but something strange happened. The chip wasn't just a beacon. It had a data packet encrypted, but old. He cracked it. The file name? Project Rava. Blood commands inside. A video. Ethan played it. A young girl, Luma, again sat alone in a white room. A robotic voice gave her commands. Stand. She stood. Kneel. She knelt. Defend. She screamed and everything in the room melted. Metal twisted. Lights burst. Scientists rushed in screaming. Then the video froze on her face, blank eyes glowing. Ethan turned off the file. Sweat on his hands. He looked up and saw Luma standing at the doorway. You found it, she said softly. Ethan said nothing. She stepped closer. I don't want to hurt anyone, she whispered. But I think something inside me does. Down the hall, the mother let out a strange cry. Ethan rushed in. She was standing in front of the wall, drawing with her own blood, a spiral symbol, and inside it, a human eye. Luma stared at it in shock. My mom was trying to protect me, she whispered. But the protection is breaking. Ethan stepped back. From what? He asked. Luma turned. From me. Asterisk. It began with a smell, not smoke, not fire, metal, burned metal and ozone. The kind of smell Ethan had only known on battlefields. He woke with a jolt, ran to the rooftop, and saw the sky split open. A ship had entered silently, burning through clouds like a blade. No lights, no signal, no flag. Ethan didn't need an ID scan. He knew exactly what it was. A hunter class, tracker, alien-made, built for one thing, to find and capture. What runs? He ran back down. Luma, hide your mom, now. The girl didn't ask questions. She moved, fast pulling her trembling mother into the hidden basement. Hatch beneath the kitchen table. Ethan threw a thermal blanket over the hatch, masked the heat signatures. Just like in the old war days, he grabbed his old rifle, loaded 2 plasma cells, and turned off every light in the house. Then, silence. Outside, the ship landed softly beyond the tree line. No explosion. No engines. Just a low hum, like a whisper made of wires, through his scope. Ethan saw them. 3 bounty hunters. Not like the flashy ones from city zones. These were old school, scarred armor. Bone tokens around their necks. Eyes that didn't blink, one of them knelt and touched the ground. Tracker was active here, it said. Voice raspy. Not translated. Another sniffed the air, literally, with long spider-like limbs. The third just smiled and walked toward Ethan's house. Inside, Luma whispered from the hatch. They're Rava killers. My kind was made to serve. But they were made to destroy us. Ethan locked the front door. If they come in, don't move. Don't speak, no matter what happens. Luma's voice trembled. They'll kill you. Ethan didn't answer. He had already made peace with that. The knock came, but it wasn't a knock. It was more like claws dragging down steel. Shreek. Then a voice, deep and playful, human inside, we smell truth. Ethan stayed quiet. A pause. Then a loud boom. The door exploded inward. Ethan fired once, hitting the first hunter straight in the chest, but it didn't fall. It laughed. Ethan rolled back and threw a flash bomb. The room lit up white. He jumped behind the sofa, fired again, this time into the leg. That one worked. The hunter dropped, but the other 2 charged in. One leapt onto the ceiling like a spider. Other lunged until suddenly everything stopped. The lights flickered. The air turned heavy. Ethan looked toward the kitchen. Luma was standing out of the hatch, eyes wide, glowing. Her mother behind her, whispering words in an alien tongue. The hunters paused, sensing it. Luma raised one hand. And without touching them, she ripped the air open. A wave of invisible force hit all 3 hunters at once. Was slammed into the wall. Another burned where it stood. The last tried to scream, but his voice melted into sparks. When it was over, only silence remained. Ethan stared. Luma stood still, breathing fast. Her eyes faded back to normal. I told you, she whispered. I don't want to hurt anyone. Ethan dropped his weapon. He walked toward her, slowly. Luma, what did you do? I don't know, she said. But it's getting stronger. Every day, he looked at the burnt floor, the scorched walls, the shattered glass. And realized this house, this zone, this world might not be able to hold her much longer. That night, as he cleaned up the mess, Luma sat beside him, holding her mother's hand. She spoke softly. When they made us, they thought we were tools, silent, obedient. She looked up at Ethan. But I think I was made wrong. I think I was made to fight back. Ethan looked at the stars above through the broken roof. If she was right, then the war that created her wasn't over. It was only just beginning. She used to sing. Luma said it softly, while sitting beside her mother, who stared at nothing. She had a voice like running water, the girl whispered. But one day, they took her voice away. Ethan said nothing. He just stood nearby, cleaning the scorch marks on the wall, where the hunters had died the night before. The silence was heavier than smoke. The mother hadn't spoken since the fight. She hadn't even blinked. She just sat on the floor, her hands folded, rocking slowly like a program stuck on repeat. But Luma was watching her, carefully, lovingly, and with fear. Later that night, Ethan asked, "What do you mean they took her voice away?" Luma traced her finger over the old slave collar still around her mother's neck. It's not just a tracker. It's also a command lock. Voice, obedience, memory. Her voice dropped. They didn't want her to speak. They wanted her to serve. Ethan knelt beside the woman. What was she before that? Luma hesitated, then said, "She was one of the first Rava." He frowned. "The first?" Luma nodded. "She wasn't just born in the lab. She survived it." Ethan didn't sleep. Instead, he pulled open the rest of the Rava files he'd hidden for years. Deep in a locked folder, he found the entry, Subject 0 Alpha, Rava Mother Protocol, not to be awakened unless Class Omega threats emerge. May hold genetic blueprint, psychologically broken. May retain ancestral knowledge if restored. Directive: silence at all costs. Do not let her speak. Ethan closed the file. His blood ran cold. The woman sitting on his floor wasn't just a lab victim. She was the blueprint of a lost species. And someone had locked away her voice because they were terrified of what she might say. The next day, Ethan made a decision. He grabbed his tool set and knelt beside her. Luma, I'm taking the collar off. Luma's eyes widened. No, wait, if it's locked, it could trigger. Too late. As soon as his tool touched the collar, the house lights flickered. The mother stopped moving. A soft beep echoed. And then she screamed, not a scream of pain, but a scream of memory. She rose to her feet like she was waking from death. Her eyes were glowing, faint but real. Her lips moved, slow and cracked. This is not my name. Ethan stepped back. Luma clutched her mother's hand. Mom? She said, barely breathing. The woman blinked. Looked down at Luma. Then gently touched her cheek. My daughter, she whispered. The next hour felt like a dream. She walked, touched objects like she was seeing the world for the first time. She remembered her name, Vera. She had been a healer before the experiments. A teacher before the collar. She had tried to help others escape the lab, but they punished her. They made her silent. They made her a symbol, the one to show all others what happens when you resist. Ethan finally asked, why are they hunting you now? Vera looked at him. Her voice was calm. They're not hunting me. They're hunting her. She pointed to Luma. She's the first Rava born without programming, no control tags, no code in her blood. Ethan was confused. But she obeys. She listens. Vera shook her head slowly. She obeys because she chooses to. That makes her the most dangerous of us all. Luma looked down at her own hands. They're afraid I'll change others. You already are, Vera said. Her voice now carried strength, soft but steady. Ethan could feel it in the air, the shift. The truth, they weren't refugees. They were the awakening of something bigger. That night, Ethan made a quiet note in his journal. The girl who knocked on my door just needed shelter. But the woman who stood behind her? She's the spark of an extinct fire, and now, that fire has remembered how to burn. Asterisk, it was too quiet. The birds were gone. The wind was still. Even the trees seemed afraid to move. Ethan stepped outside, holding his coffee in one hand, plasma rifle in the other. Veyer, the alien mother, stood at the door, watching the sky. They're coming, she whispered. How many? He asked. She didn't answer, because she didn't know. Back inside, Ethan pulled out a dusty metal case. Inside it were tools from another life. Landmines, laser nets, EMP grenades. Things he never thought he'd use again. Luma stood by the table, watching. Are you going to fight? She asked. Ethan looked at her, this small girl who once begged for shelter, now holding unknown power in her hands. Yes, he said, because this is my home, and you're part of it now. Luma's lips trembled. I'm scared. Ethan knelt beside her. Good. Fear makes us careful. But don't let it stop you. She nodded slowly. He spent the next 4 hours preparing. Barricades at the edge of the trees. Traps buried in the dirt. Old war tech connected to solar batteries. Vera, now awake and speaking clearly, walked the perimeter, chanting something ancient under her breath, an alien spell of protection perhaps. Luma helped too, drawing strange symbols on the house walls with chalk. What are those? Ethan asked. They're bindings, she said. My blood remembers them. Ethan didn't question it. He'd seen enough to believe. Then, at sunset, the sky groaned, a low hum. rolled over the trees. Ethan turned his eyes upward. Not one ship, 3, and larger than before. One was red-marked. That meant elite, mercenaries from the outer silence. Trained killers of Rova survivors. They're not here to capture, Vera said. They're here to erase. Ethan activated the defense grid. Lights flickered. Drones lifted. Landmines beeped softly under the dirt. I'll hold them here, Ethan told Vera. You take Luma and run through the tunnel out back. Vera shook her head. No, we fight together. Ethan stared. You barely got your mind back, she smiled faintly. And it's sharp enough now to end them. The first explosion came fast. The enemy didn't wait. Plasma fire hit the barricades, burning through metal. Trees shattered. One drone exploded in air. Ethan fired back, hitting one of the ground soldiers as it rushed through the smoke. Then another. But they kept coming, more than 10, some crawling, some flying. One leaped onto the roof until Luma pointed a finger and froze it mid-air. It screamed, and then melted like wax inside the house. The walls began to glow. The chalk symbols Luma had drawn now shined like light bulbs. Vera stepped into the center of the room. She raised her arms and whispered something in Rava tongue. Outside, the attackers began to slow. One of them screamed and dropped its weapon. The others froze in place like statues. Ethan stood shocked. What did you do? Vera's eyes were glowing again. I called the part of them they buried, the part they were trained to forget. Rava? Ethan asked. She nodded. They were like us once. But the red ship leader stepped forward. He was bigger, untouched by the chant, wearing a helmet that blocked psychic waves. He fired straight at Ethan. Boom. Ethan was thrown back, his side bleeding. The world spun. Luma screamed. She ran to him. Stay back. He yelled, but she didn't listen. She stood in front of Ethan and raised both hands. The ground cracked beneath her. Air bent. The red-marked leader tried to move, but his armor turned to rust in seconds. Then his body lifted, twisted, and shattered like glass. Silence. Only the wind remained. Ethan coughed and looked up. Luma stood above him, her hands glowing, but her eyes wet with tears. I didn't want to, but I had to. He smiled even through the pain. You did good, kid. She helped him up, and just like that, they survived. But they all knew it wasn't the end. It was only the beginning of something greater. Because now the galaxy knew what she was, and she wouldn't be safe anymore. They spoke of her in shadows, not in the cities, not in broadcasts, but in whispers. On mining ships near Saturn, in prison camps on cold moons, in dusty taverns across the outer ring. They whispered of the girl with glowing hands, the one who melted weapons, the one who chose to obey no one. They didn't know her name. They only called her the Free Rava. Luma sat quietly on the back of an old transport ship. She watched stars pass through the window like falling snow. Ethan lay beside her, bandaged, asleep. Vera sat across, humming. Her voice finally returned. They had escaped the neutral zone. Barely, but they hadn't run in fear. They had run to warn others. The hunt is harder now, Ethan said the next morning, coughing. I know, Luma whispered, but something's changed. She opened her palm. Inside it glowed a small symbol etched by light, not ink. I didn't make this, she said. It just appeared after the battle. Vera stared at it in shock. That's the mark of the first voice. What does it mean? Ethan asked. Vera leaned forward. It means others will hear her now. And they did. Across the galaxy, strange things began happening. Young Rava girls, once quiet and fearful, began to dream of fire and freedom. One rebelled against her owner on KYROS-5. Another escaped a breeding facility on Cold Station Echo. Each one said the same thing. She came to me, in the dream, the girl with light in her eyes. The Council of Control, those who had created the Rava long ago, met in secret. She must be captured. One said, no. Said another, she must be erased. But no one had seen her, and worse, no one could predict her anymore. Meanwhile, Ethan and the others reached an abandoned spaceport deep in asteroid sector 93B. There, a hidden group of ex-soldiers, scientists, and refugees had built a base. They were waiting for Hope. And now, it had arrived in the form of a small girl. One night, an alien mother approached Luma. Her daughter stood beside her, shy and trembling. She hasn't spoken since her father died, the mother said. Luma knelt in front of the child. It's okay, she said gently. She held the child's hand. Suddenly, the child smiled and whispered, thank you. Ethan watched from afar. She's becoming more than even she understands, he told Vera. The Rava mother nodded. She was never made to be a weapon. She was made to wake the broken. But peace wouldn't last. A fleet appeared on the edge of the sector. Big, silent. Government marked. A warning beacon arrived with a single message. Surrender the Rava anomaly, or be destroyed. Ethan turned to Luma. What do we do now? Luma didn't panic, didn't cry. She stepped outside, looked up at the sky. And whispered, let them come. When the first warship entered orbit, it paused. Its systems froze. Every screen flickered. Luma walked forward. Barefoot, glowing. Ships began to shake, not from attack but from fear. The soldiers inside started to remember things. Faint voices. Childhood dreams. Forgotten feelings. Luma wasn't attacking. She was awakening them. Back on the ground, Ethan spoke to a recording drone. This is Ethan Kale, former soldier, neutral zone survivor, protector of the Rava girl named Luma. He looked straight into the lens. She is not a threat. She is not a weapon. She is not your enemy. She's the future. The footage spread across systems. And soon, her name was no longer a whisper. It was a cry. Luma lives. Luma walks. Luma remembers us. In the final scene, Luma stood on a cliff at the edge of a ruined moon. Behind her, hundreds of Rava girls and boys, broken, silent, but now watching her. She turned. Smiled. And said only one thing. Let's go rebuild what they tried to erase.